Hi, everybody. I thought I should get back to you about what I posted last week, my Balanchine class in the year of the plague. I was being kind of facetious. I'm sorry if that offended some people. But I can't show everything Balanchine taught me in one class, which is why I referred everyone to the Suki Shore, Merrill Ashley Balanchine essays, which were fabulous because she had time and there were a lot of tapes to go into really great detail about every step. I couldn't do that. That's one thing I wanted to clarify. It wasn't meant to be a full Balanchine meal. Secondly, the two dancers were not Balanchine trained, and I'm not their teacher. They just happen to be good dancers. I think they're very good. And they'd had some SAB training at some point in their careers, but they're not to be considered, quote, Balanchine style dancers. I just wanted to use a couple dancers to show you his exercises and how fast his class was. And again, that was a company class. Okay, I thought I made it clear, but I'll make it doubly clear. That was for his company, which was normally an hour a day. Sometimes it was even less. The company had 8 performances a week in those years, 250 shows a year, which is, I think, 100 more than they do now. The class was tailor-made for what he felt the dancers needed on any particular day. It was not a well-rounded, normal ballet class. We all woke up pretty warm in the morning. You know, when you're doing 8 shows a week, you don't really ever not feel warm in the morning. You're ready to go. So he started off, you know, at a very quick clip. But as I said, so I don't want to repeat myself, but as I said, when I studied with Messerer and Pierre Vladimirov, who was Pavlova's partner, the similarity in Balanchine's class was there. It was clear. It's very few pliés, demi-pliés, grand pliés at the bar, hardly anything. Tendus started relatively quickly. Balanchine gave more tendus than either Messerer or Vladimirov. He gave quite a lot of tendus, of like 3 varying tempos, which is why I did that. Everything was, you know, pretty brisk, but again, it was the norm, I guess, for pre-Soviet Union Russian ballet. I've not taken a Royal Danish ballet class, but there are a lot of similarities with Bournonville style. Now, one person asked me if I would clarify this no heels down thing that Balanchine is famous for, that he didn't want you to put your heels down. So I have to tell you a funny story. Balanchine, when he choreographed Glinkiana, which is where Valse Fantasy comes from, there were 4 movements, and the third movement was Jota Aragonesa, a very Spanish piece of music by Glinka. And it was for Melissa Hayden in grand diva style. It was a tutu ballet and a large corps de ballet, but she was the soloist with a large corps around her, and it was very, very Hispanic and fiery and fun. So what happened was the set designer, Esteban Frances, and Betty Cage, who was the company manager, told me this story. She said that in the office, Balanchine was looking at the sketches, and for the Jota Aragonesa, the Melissa Hayden section, which was the 3rd section, came right after Valse Fantasy, Balanchine told the designer, Esteban Frances, that he wanted all red, lots of different shades of red. And so that was that. And then they had a meeting a week or 2 later, and Sir Francis brought in, Signor Francis brought in the sketches, and they were all different shades of red for the set. And Balanchine said, you know, why red? Why all this red? It's all red. Why all this red? And Francis said, well, but Mr. Balanchine, you told me you wanted red, different shades of red. And Balanchine said, well, I may have said red, but I didn't mean red. Okay? So so this gets me to the heels down, no heels down thing. Balanchine, his English was very good, but I don't know if it was a language problem or what, but sometimes he would say something and then almost sound like he was reversing himself, like this, I may have said red, but I didn't mean red story, which could make it very confusing sometimes to work with him, especially as a young choreographer like I was. But anyway, so this heels down thing. Now, Balanchine did tell us, don't put your heels down. He did. And Balanchine would have us a lot of times, of course his choreography was very quick and a quick change in direction. we would be on the balls of our feet like a boxer. That's why I liked Eddie Villela, because Eddie was very, very adept at that, because Eddie had been a boxer. When he was in Maritime College, I think that's when he basically was a welterweight. So Eddie was used to keeping his weight on his balls of his feet, changing direction very quickly. And Balanchine always would make a lot of allusions to cats. He would say we have to be like a cat on our toes, tippy toes, like a cat. Be very ready to pounce and go in a different direction. Now all that he did say, and people that took his class, I told you his classes changed after 1978, but he would give very fast things, and he would say, don't put your heels down. And he would say you should be able to slide a piece of paper under the heel when you're at the bar, especially at the bar. Okay, and that's what he said. What he meant was don't put your weight on your heels. Don't sit back on your heels, ever. You always have to be, the foot has to be ready to move. You don't relax onto your heel. He didn't mean that every single jump you did everything from demi-point to demi-point. And as I said, he explained this really only once, and that was in the seminars, the week-long seminars, 1967. And he made it very, very clear that you put the heel down on the way up. In other words, you land from a jump on the ball of your foot so that you go past where your normal demi-plie would be with your heel down. Okay, so you don't crash your heel like Nureyev would do a lot. You don't slam your heel down when you jump. You go on the balls of your feet down to past where your heels would be, unless you have crazy stretched Achilles, and then you put your heels down as you straighten up from the jump. Again, it's a tricky thing, and I don't want to get everybody crazy about it, because he did say don't put your heels down. He said that. But he didn't mean that exactly. He did mean it, but what he was trying to get at was don't relax on your heel, don't put your weight back on your heel, don't slam your heel down. The foot has to be strong all the time, and sometimes when you slam your heel down, you're actually relaxing your foot. Does any of this make sense? It's very complicated to do it just verbally. You have to work with the dancers. But it's not that you run around all the time on a high demi-point. It's just you don't crash your heel down. A lot of times you barely scrape the floor with your heel. But it's not that you do it kind of on a, I've seen too much lately, let me put it this way, of everybody running around and doing all their jumps in a high demi-point. It should not be a high demi-point. You just don't crash your heel down. Now, if you look at old videos of any of the dancers from Balanchine's period of the 50s and 60s, Jacques D'Amboise, Eddie, any of them, you do see they put their heels down. Suzanne Farrell puts her heels down. Melissa Hayden, they just don't crash them down. Does that help the question? It's like, I may have said red, but I didn't mean red. You know, and the other thing too, I don't want to come off too preachy like I know every single thing about Balanchine. Violette Verdi she was the most articulate of all the Balanchine dancers. I mean, she really analyzed. She was extremely bright, my God. But she was very analytical, and she adored him, and she really studied everything carefully so she could get it right. So what Violette did on a lecture before she died, the one, it's on YouTube, he gave us each bouquets, something like that. She uses a phrase which was perfect. It was like Balanchine made this big quilt, a quilt of different patches, right? A quilt. And he gave each of us, or each of us got a patch or two of the quilt. So that was Violette's definition of this, that we each took from Balanchine part of the quilt. Nobody has the entire quilt. Only Balanchine has the entire quilt. And Suki did, again, I'm going to brag about her. She did a yeoman's job getting this down in the Balanchine essays, videos, a whole series of videos. However, there, I won't pick it apart, but there I saw things that could be misinterpreted. Again, because she was speaking to a camera, so, you know, she had wonderful dancers behind her demonstrating. But I could see there could be, things could get out of hand, which is, you know, not her fault. That's just the way it is. And she does talk about the no heel down thing, but I wanted to be a little bit more specific about it because For instance, even at the bar, and you'll see, because at the end of this I'm going to show a bit of a class I did myself today, which is kind of embarrassing, but there are a couple of nice exercises. I'm not going to show you the whole class because it's but there are a couple of nice things at the bar that maybe some of you in your home bars might want to do, or not. I don't care. But he wanted, right from the beginning, like in a demi-plie in first position, which is when I teach, I always teach it this way. You go down to a demi-plie where your heels are, down. Then you go a little further. So that it's not that you're on demi-point to begin with. You're going down with your heel down. Then you keep going, and you plie just to the point where they're starting to come up naturally based on how stretched your Achilles is. So some people can go much lower because they have a longer Achilles or a more stretched Achilles, and some people can't go that far. But the point is to build the strength in the muscles in your leg and also in your ankles. So you go down to where the heels are normally, and then you just sink a little lower so that the heels just start to come up. You see the difference? It's not, you don't start on demi-point and stay on demi-point. You go flat, and then you go lower, and then doing that daily, you will actually stretch your Achilles comfortably, not violently. Just sink into that plie. So that's in first plie, second, fifth plie, the same thing. You don't automatically raise your heels until they have to come off. See, that's the difference. Don't be on a demi-point and then do your demi-plie on a demi-point. No, your foot is flat, and you go down with your heels down. I'm going to repeat myself. With your heels down, but you don't stop there. You just sink a little more so that the heels start to come up a little bit. Because that way you continually are stretching your Achilles, which you want to have a deep plie. You need it, so deep plie. So that's one thing. Second thing is this Balanchine hand thing. He had a specific, I can't do it because I've got, if you've noticed, I have my little fingers. I have a contracture, which is hereditary from my great-grandmother. I think it comes, I'm Northern European mostly, and I think it comes from Vikings. Actually, they used to call it the Viking thing. Viking. But I can get it operated on. I just haven't bothered. I just have to just stretch the tendon or whatever. But he had this thing with a little finger out, like you're drinking tea, which again, I wish I could demonstrate. And the thumb held in a certain way. But that was in class. You see, he wanted the fingers because he wanted everything in the human body to look beautiful and be articulated, not to be hidden, but to be shown, because we're human and we should show everything. And if we're dancers. But sometimes it's called a Balanchine claw because it can look like a claw if you don't understand it. But he mainly wanted that in class so that the fingers would be separated so the hand would look like a flower. He would use that illusion all the time. Not a pancake or a kitty litter. He used to call it a kitty litter scoop. I love that. He said, no, dear, it looks like kitty litter scoop. Flat and kind of splayed fingers. He didn't like that. He wanted rounded fingers so it looked like a flower opening up. But again, if you don't understand it, people get rigid and it becomes a claw, and then it looks ridiculous. And I always am amazed when I watch Maya Plasetskaya videos because she does a perfect Balanchine hand. And she never studied with him. She's Bolshoi, my God. But even when she does Chinese, you can see the fingers. Her hands are perfectly Balanchine, and her port-de-bras is very Balanchine. He wanted very expressive port-de-bras. All right, so I hope that clarified a couple things. The dancers weren't trained by me, but they're very good dancers, so little things they did I didn't want to correct because we'd spend all day. And both of those dancers, are not dancing in ballet companies now. It was hard to hear when they introduced themselves, but they've stopped ballet as a career, and now they're going into acting and TV and other forms of dance, but they still take ballet class every day, okay? But they're not actually in companies performing on a regular basis. So it was very nice of them to come in and expose themselves to a very critical audience, I gather. So that's that. The heels I've explained, the hands I've explained, the quilt. I don't know everything that Balanchine knew. God, I'm not that bright. But I did pay attention. I really paid attention. And again, I was lucky to be there for those 6 days of seminars where he really took it apart. One person was very critical of my Balanchine thing because she said she doesn't like Balanchine, that he's damaged people and psychologically and physically he's damaged girls. And I explode when I hear that because that's not true. That is not true. Sorry. I said to her, were you there? Were you in the company? Did you work with him? Have you met him? And the thing was, she said, well, he gave perfume to the different girls. Wow. He was an older European gentleman, and he gave perfume to his favorite dancers. He gave me a German Shepherd dog when I left the company. All right? He gave presents. He liked to give presents to people he liked, and especially when people worked very hard. He would give them an extra something. He gave me $1,000 bonus when we finished the filming in Berlin, because I worked very hard, and he gave it, I think Kay Meza got one, Peter Martins got one, and I think Karen van Ardingen. We were the only four that I guess he felt worked that hard. We were doing a lot of ballets in Berlin, the four of us. But so this thing about perfume, he liked to give the girls perfume, and he made a joke one day. He said, I give it so I know where they are in the theater. I give different kinds of perfume for different girls to know where they are in the theater. Now, some people think this is creepy. I think it's charming. And he said it as a joke. It's kind of a joke. I mean, he'd like to give the girls perfumes, and, oh, then I know where they are in the theater. I don't see that is such a crime. Anyway, and as far as this thing about being emaciated, he never wanted anybody emaciated. Allegra Kent was never emaciated. Violette Verdi was never emaciated. Gloria Govern was never emaciated. Suzanne Farrell was never emaciated. She had some very thin periods, but she also had a little bit less thin periods, may I say. He wanted his dancers healthy. And we had a doctor on staff, and Balanchine was very, very aware of when dancers were having psychological problems or emotional problems, and he was always helpful. He didn't force us to work too hard. We wanted to work for him because it was such a joy. So to this woman, I think it's a woman, yeah, it's a woman who was critical and just talking about how Balanchine damaged people psychologically or physically, well, you're wrong, dear. When people criticize Balanchine, you can criticize, if you don't like his ballets, I don't care. You don't have to like his ballets. I mean, he would always say, you don't like my ballets, don't come to the theater. He'd say, come to the theater, close your eyes, and listen to the orchestra. He was very proud of his orchestra, rightly so. And he was very proud of the music that they played, because it was like symphonic half the time, and music like Stravinsky you'd never hear. Even in a symphony hall, you wouldn't hear Agon. You wouldn't really hear the Stravinsky violin concerto, hardly at all. Anyway, so now, what I do at the end of this tape is, I still try to do my own bar. You'll see. And I did one today, but I'm not going to put everything on because I've really got kind of I strained my hip a little bit the other day, and I'm not injured. I just overdid it, my own fault. And so I'm not going to do I'm not going to post the whole bar, but I'll post some of it because you'll get a laugh. And I think you'll actually get a laugh out of the music mix I put together. I don't dance to classical music. I like to dance to all kinds of things. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope I clarified some things. And when I can find two dancers again, maybe we'll do some more things, because I have a great memory, and I remember so many Balanchine combinations. It drives me nuts. But anyway, so peace out. Everybody stay safe. I'm a great believer in science. I think, we'll find a cure for this sooner rather than later. I'm not a ridiculous optimist, so everybody has to be really careful. I wear a mask. I look like Frido Bandido. I posted that the other day. But do your bars. If you like anything I do in my bar, feel free. And if you have more questions, just send them into YouTube and I'll answer them like I'm doing now. All right, so have a good day. Happy Sunday, everybody, and I'll get this tape out to you right away. Bye.